"Do you see that over there?" Raphael asked his brother, pointing toward the back of an abandoned lot. There was a white figure, motionless, huddled next to a rusty fence, watching them from a distance. As they got closer, the strong, sour smell from the female dog became almost unbearable. The dog growled softly, trying to back away, but the short chain wouldn't allow it. Even though she was still, her eyes revealed her fear. Raphael and Daniel whispered, "Who would do this to an animal? There's no way to help if she won't let us get close." Curious to find out how it all ends? Subscribe to our channel now and tell us in the comments. Do you prefer stories about wild animals or pets? She was there, immersed in silence, tied to what remained of a twisted fence, her muzzle pressed against the dry ground, and her sunken eyes. Those eyes that no longer had any hurry to see whatever might come. The chain, short and cruel, allowed no more than a few inches of movement. Almost a sentence written in iron, limiting even the deepest sigh. There, nobody knew her name. Nobody called to her. Nobody approached for a gentle touch or even a glance. They just passed by, eyes lowered, as if that small, dirty white dog was merely another smudge in the forgotten landscape of the yard. In that lot, Hope had said goodbye too long ago to remember. The house that stood behind her was a portrait of decay. Exposed bricks, windows torn out, tall grass invading everything that was once a garden. It was an empty house, lifeless, with the past piled up in every abandoned corner. According to the few neighbors, that place had an owner, an elderly gentleman with a soft-spoken manner who lived alone. He had departed more than a winter ago, taken by the hands of fate that doesn't usually ask permission before closing doors. Bila, the little white-furred dog, had belonged to him. Since the day the old man said goodbye, she had known only isolation. The family never returned, not for furniture, not for papers, not for any animal. Bila remained tied up right at the same spot where he used to secure her leash before going out, except that time, he never came back. As time passed, other people came and went, some tossing a piece of old food, others averting their gaze in the rush of everyday life. As the weeks went by, perhaps even months, Bila no longer even barked. She seemed to have accepted her fate. Under the increasingly gray and indifferent sky, she continued breathing, and nothing more. It was one of those afternoons that seemed heavy with silence. The sky, covered with dense clouds, still held droplets from the recent rain, leaving the ground dark and slippery. Raphael, heading home after a long day, decided to change his route at the last minute. He was looking for shortcuts, perhaps escaping the routine, when a dull gleam to his right made his heart race. In the shadow of twisted, rusty bars, he spotted a motionless figure. For a second, he thought it was just an old bag, abandoned alongside so many other discarded items. But something about that huddled posture, that dirty white color, caught his attention in a way that wouldn't allow indifference. Raphael slowly stopped the car, furrowed his brow, and turned to Daniel, his younger brother, who sat quietly in the passenger seat beside him. "Daniel, do you see that over there? That white thing, tied up?" Daniel took only a moment to grab his cell phone and start recording. "I see it. Looks like a dog. Good Lord, look at the size of that chain. How could anyone leave an animal chained up like that?" Without thinking too much, Raphael turned off the car and crossed the still wet street. The bad smell, sour and persistent, reached him even before the full view did. Bila was huddled against the fence, her body pressed against the bars in the trunk. Her thin neck could barely pull against the rusty chain. Her fur, once white, was completely stained, mixed with scabby patches and small wounds. Troubled by what he saw, Raphael called out to a woman across the street who was watering her garden plants. "Ma'am, do you know who that dog over there belongs to?" he asked, feeling a lump in his throat. She sighed deeply, like someone who had answered that question 1,000 times. "She belonged to old Joe. She's been alone since he passed away, more than a year ago now. Nobody ever came back for her. Some folks toss her scraps of food, others don't even look. Poor thing. She doesn't even respond anymore." It was in that moment that Raphael felt it. If it wasn't him, nobody would do anything for that dog. He looked into Bila's eyes, so hollow and resigned, and he knew. Something needed to change, and it had to start right there at that very moment. Determined to act, Raphael approached the fence, feeling his own heart quicken. Bila backed away as much as she could, shrinking her body even more, growling softly, as if already expecting the worst. Raphael made a restrained movement. He didn't want to frighten her further. The woman from the garden, seeing the scene, approached calmly. "I can try. She knows me since I always pass by here to leave some food when there are leftovers at my house. With steady but patient steps, she bent down, spoke softly, and touched the dog's head, which for a brief moment seemed to relax just from the familiar contact. Slowly, the woman began to undo the knot of the chain attached to that old tree. Raphael watched in silence, feeling a heaviness in his chest. It was like witnessing an old wound being carefully tended to. When finally the chain came loose, Bila didn't run, bark, or lunge. She remained there, tense, confused, measuring a freedom that now seemed strange to her. Raphael knelt down, speaking gently. "I can't leave you here. I promise things will be different now." Hearing Raphael's words, the neighbor nodded. And even without appearing particularly moved, she didn't object. Raphael then held the chain. He spoke to the dog as if talking to an injured child. He tried to approach carefully. Bila moved away but didn't flee. It was as if she were testing her limits, measuring intentions. After several minutes of attempts, Raphael noticed that the chain was bothering her. So he went to the car, got a rope he kept in his trunk, and returned. With the neighbor's help, calm breathing, and no sudden movements, after a few moments, the dog allowed Raphael to place the rope around her neck with the utmost gentleness. He removed the rest of the rusty chain that still hung from her neck. Then he picked up the dog in his hands and carried her to the car, since she probably wouldn't go on her own with a stranger after so much neglect from everyone who had passed by. Hesitant, trembling, but free. And so they began to walk, Raphael carrying Bila in his arms, Daniel following with his cell phone in hand, recording every instant of that moment which, though simple, had already become unforgettable. The journey to Raphael's house was wrapped in respectful silence. Bila, still trembling, kept her eyes fixed on the car window, while Daniel, quiet, captured the gentleness of that moment. Arriving at the modest home, with its small yard and plants scattered around the corners, Raphael immediately set about providing what no animal should go so long without: a warm bath and a bit of dignity. They chose to do everything outdoors, the afternoon breeze still warming the skin. Raphael set up a large basin next to the plants, carefully filled it with warm water, and invited Bila to approach, without rushing. At first she hesitated, sniffed the ground, but agreed to stay there beside him. Raphael spoke softly, stroking her dirty ears, until finally she yielded and allowed herself to be wetted. The water slid slowly over Bila's back, dissolving old layers of mud, sadness, and abandonment. In his hands, Raphael could feel not only the dirt washing away, but also an immense weight dissolving into the air. From time to time, he looked at Bila's face, her eyes half closed, her nostrils dilated in relief, trying to decipher whether she understood all this as affection or merely as a temporary truce. It was then that Raphael noticed, while soaping Bila's paws, a poorly healed wound right there on the front, sensitive wounds and injuries on her right paw. He paused for a moment, dried the area carefully, and called Daniel to hold the towel. He didn't want the soap to get in there and sting. With gentleness, he cleaned the wound, applied an antiseptic, and wrapped the little paw with a pink bandage he had brought from the first aid kit. Bila didn't complain. She just looked at him, motionless, like someone who understands, or at least accepts, that silent care. When he finished, Bila stepped out of the basin slowly, gave an awkward shake, splashing water in all directions, and remained there, quiet, with a lighter look in her eyes. She felt the wind touch her clean skin, and for the first time in a long while seemed comfortable simply existing. The days following the rescue marked a new beginning, not only for Bila, but also for Raphael. For the first time in a long while, that modest house seemed inhabited by a quiet expectation, almost as if everyone there had begun to believe again in small, everyday miracles. On the first morning, Bila woke up startled. From her makeshift bed in a corner of the living room, she looked around like someone afraid of dreaming. Her whole body curled up, her head lowered. She barely moved when Raphael appeared with the leash in his hand, but it only took him pronouncing her name in a sweet, almost whispered tone for a new light to shine in her eyes. Bila rose slowly, still somewhat distrustful, but her eyes sought Raphael's, as if seeking permission to believe in the change. Raphael made a point of taking her for short walks every morning. At first, Bila walked with short, timid steps, smelling each tree, rubbing her muzzle on the ground like someone exploring a world much larger than the chain would have allowed her to imagine. At every loud noise, like the distant sound of a car or another dog's bark, she would stop, her body instinctively shrinking. But Raphael was always there, speaking softly, encouraging, "Come on, Bila, everything's all right." And she learned, step by step, that it was possible to move a little further each day. The neighborhood soon noticed the presence of the new resident. Children came by, curious, extending small, gentle hands to feel Bila's still rough fur. Some adults, who had followed her story from their windows, offered shy smiles and words of encouragement. It was on one of these mornings, walking slowly down the street, that Bila pressed her muzzle against a little girl's hand and allowed herself to be truly petted for the first time since the rescue. At home, signs of adaptation also appeared gradually. Bila began to follow Raphael around the house like a protective shadow, observing his every move. When he sat down to read or have coffee in the yard, she would lie nearby, sometimes just to feel the sun warming her skin, sometimes merely to ensure he wouldn't suddenly disappear, as had happened so many days ago with her former owner. The first nights were still marked by distrust. Bila would wake at the slightest noise and had difficulty relaxing completely. However, with each new dawn, she appeared a little lighter. She tried dog biscuits, until then unknown in her menu of scraps and leftovers. She lay on her back, revealing a still initial but promising trust. She began to wag her tail not only out of fear, but in happy expectation whenever Raphael approached. Raphael, for his part, was also relearning. He discovered the beauty of waiting for the right time, of valuing small achievements, and of living in the present moment. Daniel continued filming Bila's progress, proud to be able to forever record each silent victory of this unlikely friendship. Each day, the home was transforming. Less echo, less emptiness, more presence. And for the first time, Bila was showing signs that she was ready to learn the deeper meaning of the word home. It was during one of those peaceful mornings that something transformative happened. Raphael decided to take Bila to a more distant park, where there was a small lake, many trees, and few noises. He wanted her to experience the world beyond the walls of the street and the yard. Bila walked beside him throughout the journey, sometimes with an attentive muzzle, sometimes with a hesitant step, almost as if each leaf and each smell were being discovered for the first time. As they followed the shaded trail, Bila, who until then had been walking calmly, caught the fresh scent of water in the air. With a different energy, she pulled Raphael by the leash, determined, guiding him toward the lake. Noticing her unexpected enthusiasm, Raphael smiled and loosened the rope a bit, allowing her to lead him. As soon as they reached the shore, Bila didn't hesitate. She dipped her paws in the shallow water and with a joyful leap, moved away from the bank, surrendering to the pleasure of swimming. Raphael, watching with a light heart, let her enjoy the moment. Bila moved her paws vigorously, splashing water around, with her tail raised and wagging in pure excitement. Each dive was like a reunion with life, an invitation to experiences she never thought she'd have again. Her eyes sparkled as she twirled near the shore, licking the surface of the water as if everything around was wonderfully new and safe. After a few moments, Raphael called softly, and Bila returned, shaking her soaked body and approaching him with a happy expression, tongue out and chest heaving with satisfaction. There it became clear to Raphael. The past no longer defined her steps. In that brief lake bath, Bila left behind not only the dirt and fear, but also a part of all that silent waiting. When they returned home, Bila lay down on a small rug in the corner of the living room. But unlike the first nights, she didn't remain curled up. She stretched her paws, relaxed her body, and fell into a deep sleep, finally trusting in her own rest. It was the confidence of someone beginning to rehearse new dreams. As the weeks passed, other small miracles accumulated. Her fur became whiter and softer, the wound on her paw healed completely, and those magic taps, as Daniel began to nickname Bila's nervous little steps when she saw Raphael, became part of everyday life. She didn't need to bark. She said, "I'm happy just with her body, with her gaze, with her way of walking." And so in the rhythm of small joys, Bila was setting aside her fear, making room for lightness. She still didn't know everything about trust, but she already carried in her heart another certainty. She was no longer alone. Weeks turned into months, and each day, Bila established herself more firmly as part of Raphael's life. It was impossible not to notice the change. The once dimmed little dog now woke up early, ready for walks, tail already wagging even before the sun came through the window cracks. The yard gained new joy, the sound of Bila's hurried steps crossing the grass, the excitement when chasing leaves brought by the wind, the tireless curiosity before the small novelties of everyday life. The wound on her paw became just a memory, as did the cold nights in that forgotten yard. Bila earned her place in the house and in Raphael's heart. Sometimes Daniel, always attentive with his cell phone at the ready, recorded her encounters with neighborhood children or trips to the park, where now Bila ran without fear, playing with other dogs. Her magic taps became famous, turned into a symbol of simple joy, bringing smiles even to those who only watched them through screens. Over time, even visitors began to ask, "So Raphael, have you thought about a new home for Bila?" He would smile, look at the dog lying beside him, and answer, almost softly, "I already found one. She's home." In that modest home, it was Bila who taught, without saying a word, the deepest lessons: patience, compassion, and the delicate strength of hope. Raphael also learned that trust builds slowly, with respected silences, with embraces at the right time, or simply by being there, day after day. On an autumn afternoon, while the sun gilded the yard and Bila slept, stretched out on Raphael's lap, he realized something simple and precious. It wasn't he who had changed the dog's destiny, but the two of them, together, had transformed each other. The abandonment, once so heavy, was just a chapter in the past. Now in its place was the beginning of a new story, made of warmth, tenderness, and the certainty that new beginnings exist for everyone, even for that forgotten little dog with the sweet gaze and giant heart. Before we continue, share what you thought about Raphael's decision to take the dog home. Was it the best choice? If this story touched your heart, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Together, let's reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. When you subscribe, you help us continue posting stories that can influence this world to take better care of our animals. I'll give you a moment to like and subscribe. Now imagine the heart of the world watching in silence as a white dove, the ultimate symbol of hope, crosses the sky at the most decisive moment of a great sacred ritual. But in a second, what seemed to be a sign of peace transforms into horror. A stone from the shadows shatters the bird's flight, causing it to fall before thousands of people. Screams, tears, shock. What does this unexpected event really mean? Could faith be on the brink of a bad omen? While crowds search for answers, a cardinal leaves formalities behind and takes a risk to try to save the injured dove. Want to discover how this story ends? Then click now on the video on your screen and embark on this tale filled with suspense and emotion. Moving stories are always just a click away. I'll see you in the next video.